So compromise is a part of kind of the conflict level, right? So compromise is interesting. I don't know that many of us actually know what compromise is. Compromise is really each person having to give something up for the betterment, for the sake, for the common goal of the relationship. But very frequently, what actually happens is somebody just fights harder, and then the other person just says, fine, you won't stop. Or, I've heard this with having more children, unfortunately. One person just doesn't stop, talking about it, just doesn't stop asking, just doesn't stop. So then, okay, well then I guess fine. It's not like I hate children, but it wasn't really what I wanted. And whether or not to have more children is one of those there's not a compromise. You do or you don't, right? Someone will probably be not getting exactly what they want. For most other things, we can find compromise. Unfortunately, by the time we actually get into a place where we're trying to talk about compromise, a lot of damage has been done. Meaning, we probably had a really challenged and ineffectual and destructive conflict. Likely are not asking the questions like we talked about in the last lesson. Not trying to deepen our understanding about our partner's perception or why this is so important to them, why this matters so much. Is there a deeper meaning behind it? Instead, we're giving our own point of view. And again, we're fighting to win. And nothing less than getting what we want would account for winning. And what often, again, happens is if compromise is one person getting what they want, nobody feels good. The person who got what they wanted feels good for a second. And then it's like, well, my partner's pissed. Right? Like they didn't want this. So we all lose. Compromise really shows itself. The need to have really effective compromise, I should say, really starts to show itself as we move into the upper levels of the house. When we start to look at our shared meaning system, right? And when we start having children, our value systems firm up, right? What went from we just want to be good people now has gotten a little bit more, and we do so, by going to church every Sunday and volunteering and X and X and X. And now we have some specifics to it, where the other person's like, I want my Sundays, right? The weekend is a place for rest and relaxation. And we never talked about really putting our kids into church. Now we have these issues. We have these, different perception, our positions, right? And how we were raised starts to form and to come into this dialogue. Where maybe before kids didn't matter so much. Now it starts to get we get really firmed up in how we feel about something. And then we, get into what we call more of these perpetual issues. We get into gridlock. Because compromise is kind of needed and no one wants to lean in. And we feel again as if we compromise, we're losing. And if through the whole conflict, stage, you didn't feel heard, you didn't feel understood, you didn't feel validated, you didn't feel like your position at all got any time, got any air, well, then you're likely not in the space to compromise. But if we're doing all of the work we've talked about and being very intentional about creating, a foundation that feels really positive and has, respect and love and admiration and intention and effort and energy, and we look at conflict as a way to connect and we're trying to bid, then we can start to have compromise that is really effective and really amazing, where we're not just trying to win. So Dr. Julie Gottman would describe this often in the trainings that I've done in order to do Gottman therapy. When we talk about compromise and we start to go over this exercise with our clients, we want clients to have an area on this issue where they have a flexibility area and where they have an inflexibility area. I'm going to just kind of hold this up and show you a little bit, and you'll get this in your homework. So you can see we have two circles, and the inner circle, which is smaller, is where we want our inflexible, kind of things that we can't shift or move. And as like I was saying with Dr. Julie Gottman, the way she describes it, that if giving this up would actually be like giving up the bones of your body. Like that's how much it matters. When you think about it in that way, there are probably very few things in life that you feel that connected to. Like if you had to give that up, it would be like giving up the bones of your body. But when we are having very ineffective and destructive conflict, we think everything is like giving up the bones of our body. Everything. We find we have a big inability or willingness to be flexible. We put a lot. So I can tell right away where we are when I do this exercise and I see someone writing all their things in the inflexibility area. They're going into this exercise without a willingness to be open to saying, you know what, why this thing is important to me when we do it isn't as important. How we do it isn't as important, right? Where can I not budge? So I'll use an example from my husband and I, and this was very long compromise. This was a 10-year compromise. I did not want to stay in Seattle. I did not want Seattle to be my final roots. That was not what I wanted. That feels like a big chunk of being inflexible. And we had iterations and iterations and iterations of these conversations and different points in our life. But it kept coming back to, I just can't, I don't want to live here. And we had all the reasons why. We've talked about it in a bazillion different ways. But I started to get more flexible because it was, I want to live in California. I want to go home. That's it. And he would say, was there anywhere else? I'd be like, not really. California. And then we started exploring, and he started opening up to me about other options. Because to me, it was like he was not moving, and I was only moving. We were moving to California. And so we were not being flexible at all. In his mind, the minute he said he was open to it, I was calling the moving company, and we were moving. So he wouldn't give me an inch, right? Wouldn't give me anything. Anytime he did, he would pull it right back. Vice versa, right? I hate Seattle. Can't even just like say, oh yeah, it's a beautiful day. Fucking hate Seattle. Far, far apart. Well, then once we started saying, okay, once I started to see he was flexible on moving and had a willingness and started to trust that he can open up to me to share that he also wasn't as happy in Seattle as he might have been putting it out there. And then I could be a little bit more like, and I really don't know if California is the best place for us and our family. Then we could start having more conversations about moving that felt safe, that felt as though we weren't going to hold anything to like an absolute, that we were just exploring, dreaming, and compromising. So once that my inflexible area got smaller and my flexible area got larger, that's when we start seeing all this amazing overlap. And then we can be like, oh, well, we both like this, type of weather. Or we both recognize, we like the idea of maybe moving to like a Bend, Oregon, because we love to snow ski as a family. It would bring all of this outdoor elements that we're really trying to incorporate and would love. And then we were both like, well, but what does that look like for our social interactions and our jobs? And you have to get real about some of this stuff. And I was like, I don't want to start over. I don't want to start over in a place I'm not stoked on. Like I could move there. It's not my first choice. But if I have to give up my first choice and then I have to restart over and try to find new friends and I have to live in a place that's freezing and not totally sure about my work, it changes. But because we were able to be more willing to be like, here are my flexible areas, and we could talk about the overlap, and we could be respectful. And the more we talk, maybe the smaller that inflexible area gets. Or we can say that makes sense, that's inflexible, that it, don't really care where, like the West Coast, but it just can't be here. And like I said, this wasn't a conversation we had once and then decided to move, right? This was a conversation we had had, and it came out in so many different parts of our marriage. And we had to recompromise on it and recompromise on it and re-talk about it. And the better, I mean, I guess you can even say the conversation would go better when our relationship was better, right? Like when things are going well and we're navigating and we're managing conflict really well, then we could have these conversations and they felt better. When things weren't going well, and then we would try to pull this conversation out, it always went shitty. It didn't feel like anybody was willing to compromise, and that we were stuck in gridlock and there would be no way out. So like doing this kind of an exercise where you first, have really walked through and you've asked the questions and you're really understanding so much more about your partner's position on whatever the issue is. Then you can move into this, cool compromise exercise where you have, your two circles. Where am I flexible? Where am I inflexible? Let's talk through this. Let's understand where that inflexibility comes from. Right? Where are our overlaps in the flexibility? And so how can we start to move into, so maybe we don't do this, but we do that. And we do it at this time instead of that time. And we use this person. And then we can say, okay, good, because I have felt heard. My position has been validated. Maybe it has been empathized with if needed, or has been given compassion. I feel safe. I feel heard. I feel like there's this willingness that we're each going to be kind of giving something up, again, for the sake of the marriage, right? For the shared goal. Because again, very often people will tell me, oh, Beth, we have the same goals, different paths to get there. And we're going to talk about this in the next lessons. That's where we get messed up. If we could respect each other's paths, cool, but we very often can't. So if we can compromise of how we take those paths, and we're aware of it, and we're not over here being resentful and judgy and all of the things about the other path, or if we're like, okay, we're doing this compromise exercise because the goal is for this in the relationship, then you know what? I can give up this thing for the greater good. When we don't compromise, you will find your relationship in a very deep-rooted power control struggle, where you might find that you're someone who just lets, you let your partner have their way, and you will hold on to things that are really small and ridiculous. You will hold on to control and power over things that don't really matter, but it's like the only power you feel like you have, and so you assert it. Versus saying, okay, the way in which we make decisions and the way in which we compromise is not working for me. I feel as though the things I want aren't being heard or listened to. I feel like I keep giving up my needs and I'm not seeing a lot coming this way. This isn't working for me. We need to talk about that part of it too. This isn't working. The way that we're compromising doesn't feel good. And so I'm finding myself asserting control in areas and ways in which I don't want to, that aren't healthy for our relationship, that are only adding more conflict, resentment, annoyance. So again, when our bank account is full, when those levels are in really good working order, we're like, dude, you're my person. Of course I want to figure this out with you. We're on the same team. So always just continue to remember why it's so important that we work on these levels and we don't sleep on them and we revisit them year after year. Because we need to be in this really amazing place in order to compromise, to let things not get our way on certain things, which can be really hard. I would love for you to do this exercise. What's an issue? Have you been working on this issue kind of through the conflict, which would be really awesome? And think about ways where can you be flexible? Where are you inflexible? Give it a try. Right? Again, make notes. Where was this hard? Where did you notice that you were blocked, that you didn't want to compromise? Take notes to that. We're gaining self-awareness. If we just plow through, then we don't know why we're doing what we're doing and why we're being triggered in the way. We have to take the time to say, what just happened for me? So I can understand, so that I can continue to work and make progress, both in my individual self and in my self as I show up in a relationship. Because it's always going to just be progress. In no way is it about perfection. Ever. It is all about progress. Progress over perfection. Keep that in your mind. Okay, good luck with this one. This can be a challenge. All right, see ya.